Welcome. My name is Arlene Miller, and it's my privilege to welcome you, our audience, to this edition of Our Town. My guest today is Katie Gerard. Katie is a current member of the school committee and is running for re-election. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. As I've told the other candidates, the goal of this is just for us to chat and to let the audience see who you are and what you're about. So why don't we start with you just telling us, pretend we don't know anything about you, which most people probably don't. Tell us about yourself and why you're running for re-election.
Sure. Well, I'm a teacher and a mom. I teach middle school English and library at Heritage Academy here in Longmeadow. My husband and I moved here with our kids back in 2007. I first joined the committee to fill a vacant seat. I was appointed back in 2011 and then ran for my own term in 2012. So this is the end of my first full 3-year term. And I'm running for re-election because really I feel like I have a lot more work to do. I have a lot of projects in the works.
Such as?
The middle schools and the middle school SOIs, continuing to bring more special education programs back into our schools, and also really building more opportunities for our students so that they can learn really to their best ability, so that we can challenge kids who need challenges, so that we can bring the kids who need a little bit of extra help up to that point where they're ready for additional challenge.
Great, great. I think we're all on board with all of those issues. So what have you felt you've been some of your best contributions the first 3 years? So you've been in 4 years, how many?
Almost 4 years.
Almost 4 years.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're a seasoned
Yeah.
school committee person now. So what have you felt like you've contributed?
Well, I think I bring a teacher's perspective. I'm the only current teacher on the committee right now, and so much has changed in education in the past few years.
There are other people who have taught.
There are,
you're
yes.
the only current teacher.
Yeah. So, we have other, like we have retired teachers and people who left the classroom to stay home with their kids, which, I think one of the great things about our committee is that we have all of these different viewpoints that are brought to the table, and I'm able to bring, what the latest mandates and the latest changes in curriculum have brought, and the challenges that it face not only our students but also teachers. It's important that we make sure that we are training our teachers and giving them all the tools that they need to be successful. And often when the state hands down unfunded mandates, it's really difficult. So being able to bring that perspective, I think, is one of the ways that I've really added.
Now, you teach at a private school.
I do, yes.
So,
but we make sure. So
now, are we comparing apples to apples when you say all those rules?
Well, the reason that I actually work in a private school is that I have a lot more flexibility. But at the same time, I teach middle school, and most of my students go on into Longmeadow High School. So I really feel like it would be a huge disservice not to keep them on the same level and having the same mandates on them as students in the Longmeadow Public Schools have. So even though technically I'm not required to follow all of the state mandates, I make sure that my kids actually follow them and go above and beyond.
Okay, so you've been on for 4 years. What committee? I know the school committee functions, the 7 people on the school committee. There's a lot of subcommittees. I was on the school committee green subcommittee for some years now. But anyhow, so what have you been on?
So I work with the pupil service as the pupil service liaison. So for special education, I've worked in the operations subcommittee. I've worked in the
What does that mean?
Operations subcommittee it's sort of like the catch-all of field maintenance, working with DPW and other town departments to make sure that all of
the facilities.
Yeah, and then it's facilities, but also sort of recreation. It's sort of a catch-all for a bunch of different things.
Okay.
Then I've also worked with the naming committee. We just approved the naming of the auditorium after Mike Musey, which was, I think,
very
pretty cool.
nice.
Yeah,
Congratulations. That's great.
That was a great honor. So I've had this experience, and I've stayed away from the finance subcommittee because, well,
interesting.
Well, only because I really felt like, the first year on the committee was purely learning for me. There's so much to learn. Even though I am an educator, this is a whole different sort of piece of education. And, I spent a lot of time learning and listening. I think that Tom Mazza is pretty phenomenal in the way that he really helps with our budget. So, I think going forward, it would be something that I'd be ready to take on now, but I'd hesitated because I really felt like it just wasn't something that I could really understand.
So let's talk about a couple of issues. First of all, the big one that's been in the press, which I'm sure you deal with a lot of issues that aren't out of the press, is the redistricting.
Mm-hmm.
And so how did you feel that went? Are you pleased with the outcome?
Well, I don't know that anybody is really pleased. You know, there's no way to make anybody happy. It was
No way to make everybody
everybody.
happy.
Thank you, thank you. There's no way to make everybody happy. It was.
Welcome to political life.
Yeah, that, you know, I say often that I'm not a politician. I'm in this as an educator. And when we first approached this, we started actually last year when we were looking at full-day kindergarten and looking really at the impact that having all full-day kindergarten classes would have on our student population and the space issues. And this year, when we added another first grade at the very beginning of the school year in Blueberry, it became the breaking point. And it was clear something had to happen. You know, I really felt like it was a disservice, not just to our students, but to our teachers to have such,
A disproportion,
yeah,
disbalance.
in the population.
Yeah.
You know, it's, as a librarian, to think of having an extra 100 students and that I need to get to know and understand what they like reading and their reading levels and how I can help them become more passionate readers. That's a lot. You know, it's almost an impossible task. So knowing that these kids weren't really getting equal access to these services, it had to happen. I think we could have done a better job.
In what way? Do you have any?
I
Because
think-
it's going to happen again.
Yeah.
I mean, the town fluctuates, the populations fluctuate.
You know, and I wonder if we had started earlier being more vocal. It wasn't ever anything that we had tried to do secretly or behind closed doors, but we just weren't as vocal, I think, as we could have been.
And more public. The
Yeah.
public wasn't involved as
Right.
soon as it could have been.
Right, and you know, saying here, you know, and I think we had talked about, you know, looking at enrollments and redistricting, but it wasn't in a formal way, I guess, in our, you know, we had discussed it in meetings, and while I know that, you know, our meetings are very exciting, not many people choose to tune in for the whole meeting, so it can,
I don't know why.
you know, things like this can be missed. So I
Sure.
think if we had really been more proactive about really reaching out to the public earlier and then, you know, asking for more input, I think it had to happen, but maybe starting earlier and reaching out earlier.
I can tell you from past experience, and that's not going to make you feel any better, that even if you'd started 3 years earlier, that's such a hot button
Yeah.
that there's going to be winners, people who perceive that they're winners and losers, even though it's hard to call anybody a loser in this town going to any one of our schools.
Yeah,
I
you
mean,
know,
it really is.
Really, at the end of the day, it's while I understand that any change is difficult, no matter what it is, and the unknown is always difficult, or can be difficult and scary to approach, really at the end of the day, we have exceptional schools, and children are changing from one exceptional school to another.
That's right. So that's
And-
what I think you have
yeah.
to keep. You have to keep. I mean, I'm immune
Well,
to it because my kids are grown, but
No, but it sort of takes over in that people love their schools, but at the same time trust our administrators. You know, Marie Pratt and Donna Hutton are really talented administrators. They're passionate educators, and I trust that they can do a good job here. that
well, they will do a
job.
good job with
Yeah.
it. That's no question. But that's why this election to me is so important. I think to the town is so important, not because of anything you've said, but you're telling us about a situation that is really not going away.
No.
There's talk now of middle school redistricting. There's certainly the demographics you can't control where people are going to move
No,
in
and
with 6 kids or 10 kids. Or we were just talking about in our neighborhood when my kids were there 30 years ago, we had a small amount of kids, and then everybody got older and the people moved in and out, and now suddenly we have this neighborhood with all kinds of young people, which is really young children, which is really exciting, and they're probably tipping the Blueberry scale as well, but that's all great, but you need to keep the school vital, and that's your job.
And also, you know,
And-
planning for those kinds of turnovers now I think is more difficult than ever before, honestly.
Sure.
We use data and we use, sort of these statistical companies that will make guesses on what our enrollments will be based on past populations. But so much has changed. You know, we live in a very different place now where just the people who are moving in, people who have kids, our population is turning over. Things are happening.
Well, there's just so far ahead that you can
Right,
predict.
yeah, and we just can't.
And maybe there's a way to say, well, when the pressure points hit such and such and such and such, or do it more frequently, people might become more used to it.
Yeah, or just having a plan, you know,
Yeah.
and being really more, letting people know when we get close to numbers that are looking,
Sure.
that something has to happen.
So tell me, phase this into this conversation into sort of the middle school situation. I'm looking. It's good. Where are you where's that in the redistricting arena?
Next week, we will actually have our first presentation from our middle school principals about what the enrollment looks like and what.
This is the enrollment for the fall.
Right.
Okay.
Yes. And from what I understand, it seems like even though our enrollments aren't exactly equal between the two middle schools, it looks like it's not the same issue as we had
It's not going
with
to affect
Blueberry.
classes and numbers of classes.
Yeah,
and
no,
things
it
like
doesn't
that.
affect class size. It's not affecting the number of students that each teacher sees throughout the day, or the services that kids get, or having special education without really good room to meet in.
Right, and I heard that was a big issue. a little bit.
Yeah.
So is there a time, I can remember back again when my kids were in, there was a time when some parents might take their kids in and send them to private schools.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a sort of a critical point between 5th and, middle school's now 6th, 7th and 8th?
Yeah, a lot of private middle schools in the area, it used to be that they started at 7th grade.
Okay.
But a lot of them now have opened up and start in 6th grade.
So do you see a change between elementary and middle in terms of numbers?
Not like we do in the elementary grades. In previous years, it had been that we had this sort of big jump in 1st grade because parents would choose private kindergarten for the full day options. But
Sure.
now that we have full day, it'll be interesting to see, how if that continues, if that trend continues. But we haven't seen the same kind of number decrease as kids enter middle school.
Okay. So segue to full day kindergarten. Where are you on that? You're an educator?
Yeah, I think full day kindergarten is absolutely essential. The demands that we put on kindergarten students are, which seems kind of crazy to say, demands from kindergarten students, but if you walk into a kindergarten classroom now, it's very much like what a 1st grade looked like just a few years ago. The standards have really been heightened, and we have really phenomenal teachers who meet those standards with our kids, but they need more time.
So how are you going to find the money?
So I think that it means being creative with the select board and really working, and we have the school committee's been really patient, and we understand that there is a limited pot in which to draw from.
Indeed.
And the town has a lot of needs, and not one piece of that is more vital than another. I think our senior community has needs. They need a new senior center. They need options for lifelong learning and different partnerships that we've sort of started to build and hoping to make a stronger bridge in that area. We need to be able to support our fire and police department. We need sidewalks, we need roads, and we need full day kindergarten.
Yeah.
So,
but you're not looking at your budget.
well, that's the thing. That's why Tom Maz is so amazing, because he can get us down to like the very last half cent to make sure that we can make full day kindergarten happen.
Yeah.
I think that really it needs to happen. It needs to be a free program for all students. We've been, really working and looking at numbers so that next year we can really work to make it happen.
Sure. Talk a little bit about the middle schools. I don't know a lot about the issue, but I know there's, as facilities, they need work. I think everybody understands that. Do we repair? Do we renovate? Do we build? Do we consolidate?
So
Those
I'm
are
not a
the
building
issues.
engineer, and what part of filing the SOIs was to have really professional, seasoned building engineers come in to study the buildings and to give us the recommendation on what is best to do for our town.
Though engineers aren't going to tell you what the population's going to be or what you should do that way.
They can, so the Mass Building Authority, School Building Authority will come in and they will give us suggestions based on sort of enrollment trends and the data, which, we both, we know is not in concrete.
And they won't come in without that.
The SOI?
Yeah.
So with the SOI, it's when you file an SOI, you're
What does
basically
that stand for?
a statement of interest.
Okay, thanks.
Educators love acronyms.
It's okay,
so
yeah, everybody does. I'm
yeah.
sorry.
So, when you file this, it's basically getting in line and saying, this is something that we see our town is needing. And the Mass Building Authority can say, hey, we're going to pick you and basically partner with you to do this. So instead of our study being $750,000, the Mass Building Authority will basically split the cost with us. So they come in and they help us with the professionals and they help us with the cost to get these studies done.
Just for the analysis.
Right, yeah, and when I say that number, I honestly don't know what the number would be.
Yeah,
it
good,
might
because
be
that number makes me very
no,
nervous.
no, I don't think that it would be that high, but I'm just throwing a number out that, we're gonna split it with you, and they come in and with people who know schools, who are, professionals who know how to study the school, and also people who understand, what a middle school should be and what can best serve students in a community like ours. And then they give a recommendation. They don't tell us what to do.
Mm-hmm.
They give a recommendation, and then we can come to the town with really solid facts and say, here's what they've said. please tell us what you think.
Is this a way to make them the heavy, I mean, you guys internally have a sense, you maybe can't talk about that, but.
Well,
I mean,
for a new middle school, I think we need, something has to happen, whether it's a new school or
fixing up
the old schools, or because every year the middle schools end up on the capital list, and oftentimes they're put on the bottom of the list because we're told, well, you're going to get new schools soon, or you're going to rehab the school soon, and why spend money when you're going to be.
Yeah, and so that's just like the high school, they let it go completely for the last 10 years because we're going to get a new high school.
Right, and I think
and by that time it was really bad.
Well, that's what, we're trying to really avoid that trap with
good.
the middle schools and be more proactive in that way. I think that, we took out a lot this year. I think the SOIs were well written and well done. I think that there was just a lot of attention, not just from our board, but from other boards. Our attention was in a million different directions. So I'm hopeful that we will file again next year. If I'm on the board, that's one of the groups that I sit on, is the middle school group, because that's what I do for a living. I understand the school, I understand the kids that are in the school, I understand what it's like to be a teacher there. So and those facilities really need updating for the kids and for the teachers.
So talk a little bit about the school committee's relationship, what it is, what it should be with the superintendent. What's your sense of that?
So we're, we have different roles. We are in charge of policy, we're in charge of budget, and the superintendent.
The school committee.
The school committee. Yeah. And so I say that because we are, a very separate body from the superintendent. I don't think it's our job to just give, a rubber stamp and approve everything. I think that we work really collaboratively, and, I think that when we are given the information, we can make good decisions. And I also think that there are times when we've disagreed with the superintendent and we've worked on a solution that we are comfortable with and the superintendent feels is best. At the same time, Marie Doyle is a professional. She has the background and the knowledge and access to other professionals to be able to provide us with that information. And she doesn't work alone. Our admin team is really great. We have phenomenal building principals. We have a really good assistant superintendent and assistant financial superintendent and technology director, and all of these people that work to make sure that our schools are successful.
So you hire and fire the superintendent.
Right.
You're a policy, and she's the boss of the administrators.
Right. And she, they're in charge of curriculum. We approve purchasing curriculums and things like that, but to say we don't have a say in what or how is taught, I guess, if that makes sense.
Sure.
I think that there's a certain point of it, we're piloting math programs for the elementary school right now. We have to approve the funding to purchase whatever the teachers, the professionals say, this is what we've really vetted as the best for our students.
Do you feel the school committee should have any role in curriculum?
No.
Okay.
No,
I mean, you're a teacher. And
I am, yeah. No, I mean, I think one of the issues that we have in education, and not just on a town level, but really on a nationwide level, is that non-educators make decisions on curriculum that they don't understand the implications of. It's a common misconception that, well, I finished 5th grade, I could go ahead and teach it. And there's so much more to teaching, to understanding how children learn and how to meet this really vast array of abilities and backgrounds and background knowledge sets that come into a classroom, that it's not our place to step in where there are professionals that we trust to make those decisions.
So you said there's a whole bunch, I asked you off camera, so tell on camera why you want to run again for another 4 years, another 3 years.
Well, I feel like my work is not done. I have the middle school working group is still one thing. I really think that I would like to finish that and at least get our SOI filed and approved. And I'm not done with special education, bringing more out-of-district programs back into the district. I think that's the best place to educate kids is in their neighborhood schools. And I also think that it saves the town money. We spend,
usually.
And one of the things, we can build up really great programs to then invite children to come and learn in our schools. And it's just the right thing to do, honestly. And I also really feel like, we have huge work. We're a big part of the town budget.
Huge.
And we're also the biggest employer. So all of these are big responsibilities. And it took me quite a while to really learn and understand how many layers are involved and just exactly how to get things done and how everything works. And now that I really feel confident, I feel like I can be much more productive in the next 3 years.
It's interesting to hear you say that, given that you are in a school system, private though it may be, still this was a learning curve.
Oh, absolutely.
Even though you're in some element of the education system, this was still a...
I can talk to you until the cows come home about like pedagogy and theories of education, but the workings of the school department and on the administrative level and overseeing so many different facets of it, it takes a lot to learn. And I think that one of the things that I'm really proud of is the fact that before I really acted, I wasn't just sitting, idle, but I really stopped and listened and learned and sought out as many people as I could talk to understand exactly how everything worked, to do it properly, to do it legally, to make sure that we were really, crossing our T's and dotting all our I's,
Sure.
and that I understood how it worked.
Before you ran
Right,
the first
yeah.
time, yeah.
Yep.
So tell me about, a little bit about the budget process and the relationship between the town manager, the select board, and the school committee. How do you, you laugh.
That's one of the things that I haven't quite fully been able to understand how, and this is something that people kind of giggled quietly when I said it when I first joined the committee, that I don't see the town and the school as separate. I see us as really one. We're all in it for the town.
It's all our
And
tax dollars.
It is. We all draw from that one pot, and
That's
it's
right.
a limited pot. And I think that the relationship has to be that, the school committee really understands the variety of needs in the town. And when the select board and the town manager say, here is your budget, and here's what we can do, and here's what we say,
This
as
is the
we
part of the pie.
Right, and when we as a school committee have that and have the limitations set before us and looking at the needs of our students to make sure that we can meet them all, it can be challenging. I think that we need to start earlier and work more collaboratively with the town manager and the select board.
Did you think it was not collaborative this year?
I think that this year we were definitely moving in the right direction.
Does collaborative mean that you get everything you want in town?
No, absolutely not.
Okay.
No,
I just
no.
wanna be sure that.
No, I think, there has to be, it would be great if we could get everything we want, just like it would be great if the select board could get everything that they want. But the reality is that, we have a residential community that we depend on for our taxes.
And yeah, that's right, and we don't have a lot of business.
Right, and that, that puts a
Our
burden.
tax base is limited.
Yeah, and we understand that. I mean, I don't think that there's anybody who sits on any of the boards in town that doesn't understand and appreciate that. It can seem as if there are times when the school department might be seen as greedy, but I promise never once have we had any discussion where the variety of needs has not been considered. But really our job is to put students first, and that's our number one priority, eyes on the child, and I take that very seriously. Every decision that we make needs to be done fiscally responsibly, but with our eyes on the child at the same time. And that can be a really hard balance to find.
Well, I think balancing Proposition 2.5 governed tax base is a challenge. There's no question about it.
Yeah.
I mean, both sides. I mean, it would be great, they make movies about people changing roles and walking in each other's shoes. I mean, that's really what needs to be done sometimes between these two boards.
I think, yeah, and I think this year we were moving in the right direction. I was disappointed as we got closer to town meeting that it seemed to sort of some of the progress we had made seemed to kind of slip back a little bit, but I think that that's possibly just part of the process of it is, the frustration and the amount of time, and everyone is so passionate about what they do that, it can sometimes lose sight.
I will tell you unashamedly that in terms of being a selfish school committee, the last 5 or 6 years has been the most unselfish school committees in my almost 40 years living in Long Meadow. So
yeah, we've been very careful about.
It's been a change, and I tell you I can appreciate that because there were some that said our eyes are on the child, and the child, whatever the child wants, the child should get, and therefore everybody else can just
No, I think
that sort of thing, and balance.
No, I think that it's, I think we have Tom Mazza to thank for that quite a lot. Our
I think you're probably right.
He is amazingly talented at creating a budget that is able to serve our children, but at the same time, it's a really tight budget. We turn back such a small amount. We haven't gone over. We turn money back to the town, and it's such a small amount that our percentage of error is, less than 1%. And when you're looking
well, it's because your budget's so big. Wait a minute.
But when you also look at such a big budget, it's impressive to have such a small
how much
portion.
did you turn back this year? Do you have any idea?
Oh, I think it was 200. I can't remember the
I know,
exact number.
that's why I'm laughing.
But it's
that's significant money for
Oh.
people who realize how big your budget is.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
and I will also compliment your school committee in that for many years when I was serving on the select board, the school committee did not turn a penny back. It was their religion almost to find a way to spend everything and not turn anything back.
No, I mean, yeah.
So the fact that you're being less greedy and turning money back is extraordinarily, as a taxpayer, refreshing.
Well,
Now, a lot of people don't recognize that you're doing all those things, but that's significant.
Well, we do. We look at really a view of holistically, what is the town, where is the town at?
As an elected person, I'm telling you,
Oh, well,
I
thank you.
appreciate that, and I appreciate that your fellow board members seem to share that, wherever that's coming from, share that idea.
Well, it's a responsibility. I mean, I think we're all in it together, and we have a really valuable set of little citizens in which to educate, and we appreciate the sacrifices that the town makes to make sure that the kids in this town have an exceptional education. So I feel like we create partnerships that way, and that's why people continue to support the schools, is that we've been responsible like that.
It's great. So is there any last thing that you want to say to the audience in terms of why they should vote for you? On June 9th, you should definitely vote.
Yes, please vote.
Yeah.
I really feel like I have more to offer. It's been a really tremendous honor to serve on the committee, and I am so proud to call myself a school committee member. And I would, yes, I would very much like to continue that work and to make sure that I continue to meet every student's needs.
Great. Well, thank you very much for your time and sharing your thoughts with myself and with the audience. I know I was telling my husband the other day that I'm the luckiest citizen in town because I get to interview one-on-one each of these candidates. So I walk away, I think I really have a sense of who they are, and I appreciate being able to do that. But for our audience, I want to just reiterate, the election is on June 9th. Mm-hmm. There are two, even though right now I'm interviewing a school committee candidate, let's talk about the school committee candidates. There are 3 people running for 2 seats, and the school committee does manage over 50%, I'm going to say 60 or 70%, and if you include benefits, probably more like 80% of the town's budget, $60 million budget. So it's a very important decision-making group of individuals. So voting for those people that you think are best is an important civic responsibility. And in the select board race, there's 4 individuals running for 2 positions, and the same thing is true. They control the other part of the budget that the school committee does not. So June 9th, even though there's not a big, humongous issue other than these candidates that are running and need your votes, it's a very important election to the community. So thank you to your audience, to my audience and your audience, and thank you to Katie Gerard, your name again,
so much.
for coming in and taking the time to be interviewed. And good night.